Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, October 2nd, and we have a great show for you today. Carrying on a recent trend of interviewing folks whose business is not politics or government, today's guest is Brookline Village resident Leslie Forde. She's an entrepreneur and author. Her book just came out, Mom's Hierarchy of Needs. And we're going to talk about the book and really the reason for the book in an interview we recorded last week. First, as always, we're going to begin with the news. The United States government shut down Tuesday night after congressional leaders could not come to an agreement on a stopgap bill. Some services, including Medicare, SNAP, and TSA, remain open, albeit at reduced staffing levels. In the latest round of National Guard deployments, President Trump has sent troops to Memphis and plans to deploy them to Chicago and Portland in the coming weeks. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration from steering $233 million in FEMA disaster relief from blue states. Massachusetts Revenue Commissioner Jeffrey Snyder announced Tuesday that the Republican mega bill President Trump signed earlier this year will reduce state revenues by about $650 million. The Massachusetts lottery saw a 3% increase in lottery sales in August compared to 2024, due at least in part to a Powerball prize recently exceeding $1 billion. The Department of Early and Secondary Education released the results from the latest round of MCAS testing, showing nominal increases in scores. The Brookline Department of Public Works is adding up to 3 food waste drop-off bins around town later this year. Residents can vote on the town's website on potential locations. Starbucks plans to close 2 stores in Brookline, both unionized, located in Coolidge Corner and near Boston University. Its non-union stores, located in Brookline Village and South Brookline, will remain open. Brookline Metco released its annual report, which includes data and narrative on students' academic performance and community involvement, and sets goals for the upcoming school year. Folks, that's the news. I hope that you will stay tuned here only on Brookline Interactive Group to hear my pre-recorded interview with Leslie Forde, author of Mom's Hierarchy of Needs. Stay tuned. And we're back with our guest of the day, Leslie Forde. Leslie Forde is the CEO of Mom's Hierarchy of Needs, and she's an author. She recently wrote the book Repair with Self-Care, Your Guide to the Mom's Hereditary Hierarchy of Needs. I'm getting it. And she's also a Brookline mom, a Pierce parent. And Leslie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here.
So here on Brookline Interactive Group TV on TV, most of the time we interview politicians, wannabe politicians, candidates, new town staff, department heads, new executive directors of nonprofits. But I'm trying to branch out. I'm trying to bring in guests who represent a broader fabric of our community, and invariably who also are doing really fascinating things well beyond Brookline's borders. And Leslie, you're one of them. And I've known you for years, and I'm excited to take this time. Before we talk about the book, folks got to get to know you. And so, Leslie, why don't you just start by, telling us about yourself? What have you been doing your whole life?
Oh, well, I love that question. I began my career and even my pre-career, which now everybody knows, as a market researcher. And I became very fascinated with what kind of makes people tick and what's behind their behavior and how they build relationships with each other and with products and services. So when I completely burned out after my second return to work, when my daughter was born, at the time I felt adrift. I felt like I was going to die. I felt like I must have missed some memo that went out to all the other mothers and all the other parents in the workforce. But in time, and it took a good couple of years before I could start this process, I realized that I had the skill set of being a researcher and that I could start to really solve this challenge that I was facing by understanding why it was happening and what other people were doing. So that has been kind of throughout my career, the through line: research, understanding what makes people tick, solving problems that way. And before all of this, I spent the past 10 plus years working in childcare, elder care, early childhood educational media, children's mental health, and a stint as an advisor for a mental health startup. So that also provided some fabric for these topics and issues that I examine now.
And so you took all of that and you wrote a book. I know you've got the book for us. Show it to us. We want to see it. Prepare with Self-Care, Your Guide to the Mom's Hierarchy of Needs by Leslie Forde with an E. Your finger was covering it, but there really is an E there.
Oh, there really is an E there.
There's the E. And where can folks get this book?
It's available where all books are sold, so you can order it online. It's available in quite a few bookstores. I don't know if it's in Booksmith yet, but I've seen it in some Barnes and Nobles, and you can access it everywhere. So my publisher's been great about getting it out there.
That's got to feel pretty good to see it in person.
It is really exciting. It's been over 2.5 years to reach this point, so it was really fun to just happen into a bookstore and see it on the shelf.
And so you got to tell us about this book, right? The title seems pretty straightforward, and yet um, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure there's so much more to it.
There's so much more to it. Well, again, I kind of came to the idea for the mom's hierarchy of needs after I burned out. At the time, I had taken on a promotion while I was pregnant with my second child. I was working in a pretty demanding role and went from managing one team to two. And I was kind of assured by my then manager and the leadership team, you know what, we've got your back. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And within a few weeks of before coming back, the general manager of our division, my boss at the time, he called and said, you know, Leslie, your senior director, your rock star, we've had to move her into a different division. And by the way, we can't backfill her because we're trying to demonstrate profitability. And you know, all those open recs we had for new roles, well, again, we're trying to demonstrate profitability. So we've had to close them. And within a few months of that, I had 3 different people in one area of my team all need to take FMLA leave, completely unplanned and random reasons. These were not parental leaves. So suddenly I was in a new job. And I was being asked to bring my most strategic, clear thinking, thoughtful self to the work when I was sleeping in 90-minute increments and I had a newborn and a toddler. And I found myself so many days driving out to Waltham and forgetting how I'd gotten there. Or I would get there and I would kind of race through the parking garage and run up to the floor, ninth floor where I worked and realized I had left the breast pump at home. And I would have to drive all the way back. And it was probably the first time in my life where people who didn't know me well asked if I was okay. I didn't look like I was doing well. So at the time, you know, even though I was a vice president in a public company, I didn't feel like I could just raise my hands and say that I was struggling and that I couldn't work in the same way. And so I did something that it turns out, statistically speaking, a lot of people do, especially mothers. I downshifted. The job that I loved became unsustainable. I went to a 4-day work week that I negotiated at a much larger company. And even though I was still a senior person, I had one direct report instead of 2 departments. And I took a 40% pay cut. And it still took over 2 years to really recover from burning out. And it was in that process where founder, who actually used to be a Brookline dad, had started a business in Cambridge. I'm kind of known as a researcher and someone who can help figure out market entry points. So he had reached out to me and said, I want to kind of start this I want to start this business. It's focused on a wearable for stress. I've heard that these are your skills. I know you're in a full-time role, but can we have a conversation? And in that conversation, he said, why are moms so stressed? And he's a dad of three, mind you, and he's a lovely man. But I said, there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and then there's mom's hierarchy of needs. And it was just like something clicked for me. I said it, I drew it on a little piece of paper. I later turned it into a PowerPoint. And because I started my career in research, I thought, what would other moms say? Would their hierarchy of needs look like this? And I'll just describe it because I think it helps illustrate the point. On the bottom, all the things that we really prioritize, which, like in Maslow's world, those are things like food and shelter. In the mom's hierarchy of needs, they're things like our children's well being and their milestones and their education. And then the next layer includes all of the things that we're responsible for in our homes and our households. And then the layer after that includes our professional roles. And way up at the top are all the things that we really need to do for our mental, physical, and emotional health, which in my paradigm, that includes things like sleep and stress management and movement, healthy adult relationships. If you are partnered, that includes with your partner. But the reason I wasn't making time for those things at the top, and what I learned about, 150 moms later, was that many of us were not making time for, is because the things we really value in the bottom two-thirds, they have no finish line. So there's no done at the end of the day. There's no done for childcare or children's well-being. There's certainly no done to household work. So you kind of get in this cycle of really spinning in a circle trying to finish everything when there really is no finish line. And understanding that that's what was happening to me gave me this odd permission. It freed me to stop trying to do the impossible. So I became much more ruthless about my time and carving out that space for things like rest and movement and all and sleep and those critical priorities for health. And although it took over 2 years, I began to kind of return to being able to think a clear thought and manage my well-being in a new way. It also helped my career. And for a lot of us, when our work really revolves around strategic thinking and planning, when we run ourselves down, we're in burnout mode, we don't have sufficient support trying to take care of our kids or our families, it starts a cycle that's really hard to escape from. So that led me to continue to do more research in this area, initially with moms. And then around the pandemic, I started looking at this challenge for all parents. So I have a study with close to 4,000 parents, 97% of whom are women. So it's super mom heavy, but I do have some dads represented. And I've been examining like what are all the internal barriers to caring for our health? And then what are all the systems barriers, the systems of work, the systems of public policy? What's the infrastructure around us that makes it difficult to tap into our well-being in a sustainable way?
So when folks get the book, are you laying out for them how to get their life in order, how to organize, how to say no, how to set boundaries, how to divvy up their time in some pie chart or use some PowerPoint? Like, what do folks get out of the book? What should they expect, other than getting into great conversations because they're reading it on the green line? Um, what should they expect from this book?
It's a great question. I mean, yes, it is those things that you just described, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of the overview of how it's laid out. But it's also in the context of the real world that we live in. So I'll especially share this with you and your audience because of the work that you do that's so critical. A lot of the real answers to create a sustainable infrastructure for parents are public policy answers. However, those are not quick solutions. And I'm trying to encourage people, especially mothers who are still at greater risk for stress related illness of every kind, who are still often struggling to achieve the visibility and the growth that we deserve in our careers, that there's still the need today, this week, this month to make things better, while we also understand and work in concert with long-term systems change. So with that said, I broke the book into three sections. The first section is free your mind. I started researching what are the real stressors that make us feel like our brain's been in a shredder by 9 a.m. every day. And I started to learn a lot, and I ran a couple of qualitative studies about the mental load, which of course is not unique to mothers or even unique to parents, but cognitive overload is like, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but our working memories pretty much are like a bookshelf that has room for seven books. And no one loves to hear this, but it's like not 17 books, not 70 books, but seven. So the more we're trying to think about, oh my gosh, did I pack the lunches? Did I get the sippy cup? The sippy cup camp time is coming up. I have to fill out that form. Oh, my boss is sending me a text message. I better check into that meeting. The more of that we're loading into our brains every day throughout the day, it edges out a lot of the clarity and it adds a ton of stress because our brains don't like the feeling of things falling off the bookshelf. So I dig in a bit to cognitive load, but also other stressors that are less talked about, like decision fatigue. And again, if you're trying to figure out what to serve for breakfast and what sippy cup to use and whether kid A has to be at this soccer field and kid B has to be at this track meet, it starts to make it really hard because I learned that we have a biological limit to how many decisions we can make in a day, which no one likes to hear that either. And I certainly didn't like to hear it. But understanding it allows you to be really strategic about how you structure your day and how you structure your decision making and how you develop some systems inside of your own life. And then the third one is time scarcity and how scarcity of any kind, whether it's time or food or money, really rewires how we think and how to overcome that. So, all of part one is just about those stressors. The second part is about easing your workload. And that's in a very expansive way. That's self advocacy at work. That's leaning on support systems and infrastructure at work. That's childcare. I have a chart that actually outlines childcare by mental load complexity, not just by cost. So many parents and families think about the hard dollars associated with childcare, which, as you know, in this area especially, is significant. But what people don't tend to realize, like we get so excited, like, oh my gosh, my kid's in kindergarten and everything, all the problems of childcare are solved and that's it. Right? No. I mean,
No way.
right. School's 180 days a year. So I share in the book, unless you are a teacher and you work in the same school district as your children, school is not the panacea for childcare that you may think it is. And there's lots of other ways to outsource, family source, spouse source, cobble together resources. But there's a mental cost to doing that. So I really look at what are the levers you can pull financially, if you have the ability to buy your village or parts of your village, buy your village. Do it without apology. Do it willingly and openly, because if you can, that's part of the answer. If you can't buy your village, lean on family members, friends, neighbors, develop community relationships, and build those into how you run your life to ease your workload. And then, of course, in the workplace, the rules tend to be different. we tend to, especially for women, we often do not have the same social power or psychological safety at work. So I have a whole set of strategies around workplace flexibility and advocacy. And then the last section's all about health span, which is my not so secret ministry for moms is better health and well-being. As you may know, last year, then Surgeon General for the US, Dr. Vivek Murthy, he described parent stress as a public health crisis. We are at greater risk for burnout. We are at greater risk for anxiety, depression, and for women, fatal heart disease, hypertension, like autoimmune sufferers, 80% are women. There are a lot of short and long-term consequences to being overloaded on a continual basis. So the back part of the book includes mental health, emotional well-being, managing sleep, rest, movement, hormonal health. I interview incredible clinicians and experts and researchers all the time. So I share some great insights from my study and from other studies.
That's a lot. And the book doesn't even seem to be a textbook. It seems sort of manageable. Um,
Yeah, it's manageable
you,
and very actionable.
you didn't you didn't wake up, you didn't have this conversation, coin the phrase mom's hierarchy of needs, and start writing the book the next day. Right. So in addition to the book, you're CEO of this business, Mom's Hierarchy of Needs. Tell us how that's going and what you have to do for that. And you don't have much time to tell us, so get right to it.
Okay, I'll get right to it. Well, I started the business really as a platform for the research and the writing. Right before the pandemic, I was laid off from my then employer. The world fell apart a month later in March of 2020. And I realized, wow, I guess this is a terrible time to look for a new job. And I guess I'm going to have to become the CEO of this blog that makes no money. So I started asking everyone I knew how they would use this research. And it became pretty clear within the first few hundred responses of my study that a lot of moms and dads were telling me what they wish they could tell their employer, what they wish they could tell their HR team. So I used those insights. I had 85 interviews in 6 weeks and created version one of the employer platform. So I'm mostly helping organizations and leaders figure out how to create psychological safety for parents and for elder caregivers and those who are caring for adults in a scalable way. Flexibility in a very expanded sense, psychological safety by modeling it and showing vulnerability and giving people access to flexible expectations, not only hard deadlines or hard metrics that don't really map to how conditions change, increasing access to childcare and elder care support, and increasing and curating and destigmatizing mental health care. So that's the framework, and the overwhelming majority of the work I have been doing is supporting employers and employee resource groups with caregiver infrastructure.
Who's paying you for all of that?
Well, it's typically the human resources team that I report into, but it's also, it's an operational decision because I tell leaders all the time, you can pay cleanly on your P&L for things like childcare and elder care and increased mental health support and manager training and adequate staffing, or you can pay on the back end in the form of attrition, burnout, unplanned FMLA leaves. But either way you pay. I work with organizations like locally, HubSpot's been a long-term client, the Bar Foundation, MIT. I work with organizations like Capital One and Merck. So typically larger employers, but not always. And they do recognize that absenteeism, burnout, health related failures, and childcare and elder care failures are incredibly expensive and bad for business. So, flexibility that makes it feasible for parents to succeed in their work is the same kind of flexibility that a 25-year-old guy who wants to surf and have a dog would enjoy. So it's good for the culture of the workforce.
And do you ever work with individual parents who are just trying to straighten up their own life?
Not individually, but I do have a membership for moms. I'm glad you asked. So there are moms who, some of them, quite a few of them are from my employer clients, where it's a wellness offering. And then I do have moms who come in individually. So I have a wellness app where you can track how much time you're spending at the top of the mom's hierarchy of needs. It allows mothers to set goals. It gives them personalized readouts on how to increase time spent on self-care, in addition to monthly calls that we have as a group to problem solve in a safe space, and a ton of resources, including all the expert interviews that I conduct with, clinicians and researchers and leaders. So that side of the business is kind of the mom specific part of the work because there is an experience that many of us have that intersects the postpartum experience, dealing with the workplace, managing, growing our careers and our families at the same time. That is a little bit differentiated than the advice I give to employers for all caregivers.
So, at the risk of being cheeky and saving this question for when there's only 1 minute left to answer it, what should dads who care very much about one particular mom be doing? What can they be doing? What could they be doing to support that mom?
I love that question. I tell dads, especially new dads and expecting dads all the time, carve out a regular time where you are in charge of something, right? Ideally, it's the kids. And don't say, I want to help you out, or when you need help, just ask me. Say, you know what? I want to bond with my kids. And every Saturday from, 9 until 12, I'm going to take them out. Or every day from 3 to 5, I want to bond with the baby. And then she starts to relax and have a period of time where she can get extra rest or sleep or spend time with friends or make plans. So dads can be really proactive about child bonding and care and involvement in the household. I also suggest dads consider buying Repair with Self-Care, your guide to the mom's hierarchy of needs. It's a lovely gift, but the more involved dads are in the home and with their families, it's wonderful for our kids and it's wonderful for moms.
Leslie, thank you so much for coming on TV. Folks, Leslie Forde, she's the author of Repair with Self-Care, your guide to the mom's hierarchy of needs. Leslie, say goodbye and hold up that book so we can see it.
Thank you so much. And I'm thrilled to be here, honored to have this conversation with you, Tommy. Thank you for the invitation.
Folks, thanks for watching TV right here on Brookline Interactive Group. We will see you with another episode next week. Be well.